Ready? Okay. Good morning. Welcome each and every one of you present here in the hall, as well as our new joiners online over Zoom. My name is Johnny Hello, and with the support of the team, I have the pleasure to moderate this panel consisting of 4 sessions. Let me start by welcoming Mr. Khalil Dingizli, our chairman for the panel, Re-Engineering the Economy. Mr. Dingizli is the head of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development's operations in Lebanon. He holds several degrees from the HEC and ESCP Business School. Mr. Dingizli was also a former Equity Capital Markets, ECM, Vice President at Crédit Agricole. He will be the chairman of the Re-Engineering the Economy panel in our Lebanon Looking Forward Forum. Mr. Dingizli, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this second day of Lebanon Looking Forward event. My name is Khalil Dingizli and I'm heading the EBRD operations in Lebanon. First of all, let me thank the Citizen Foundation and Alain Bifani, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Norway, and all the colleagues who have participated in the preparation of this event. I am honored to share this third panel entitled Re-Engineering the Economy. Together, in the room or on Zoom, we will discuss and debate 4 different topics. We will start by industry and citizenship. Then we will discuss the agriculture sector in a context of critical food security situation in the world and in Lebanon in particular. Our third panel will tackle the engines of the economy, and we will finish with the future of the financial sector, and closing remarks by Svein Harald Øygard. Whether the industry, the agriculture, the financial sector, there is one common ground to the whole of the Lebanese economy, which is the urgent need for reforms. Reforms to modernize the economy, to liberalize it, to unleash its potential, to improve its governance standards, to increase green, to promote inclusion and gender, and the list is long. In such a context of urgent need for reforms on all fronts, in a collapsing economy, we believe that the answer, the only answer in the short term, is a successful implementation of an IMF program. Today, in our views, there is no other option. We can, of course, debate ideas of asset management companies, of selling the state's assets, of monetizing oil and gas potential future revenues, and I know that the foundation tackled this topic recently. But all of this require a long time process, and today, the Lebanon economy does not have that time. It's true that $3 billion is a drop in the ocean, but only an IMF program will help restoring the trust of the international community. It will have a catalyst effect and will bring dozens of billions of FDIs, of international financial institution support, and of bilateral and international cooperation. As far as the institution I represent today, the EBRD will continue its commitment to Lebanon. We will continue supporting the reform agenda and promoting the Lebanese economy and notably its private sector through advisory, technical assistance, and policy dialogue. And we hope that we'll be able to resume our financing and investments as soon as the IMF program is implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, the situation of the Lebanese economy is critical. The challenges are immense. At the same time, the potential is huge. And I hope that with our discussions today, that I hope to be as interactive as possible, we will together be able to identify ideas and recommendations so that the Lebanese economy can indeed go forward at last. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dingizli. We will immediately proceed with our first topic in this panel, entitled Industry and Citizenship, by Dr. Fadi Jmail. Dr. Jmail is the president of the Association of Lebanese Industrialists. He's a PhD holder in Management Science from the Université Paris 1, Panthéon-Sorbonne. President of the Syndicate of Owners of Paper and Packaging Industries in Lebanon. President of the Arab Federation for Paper Packaging and Printing Industries, member of the ILO governing body in the Asia and Pacific for the period 2017-2020, member of the Technical Association of Pulp and Paper Industry in the USA and Canada, corresponding member of the European Federation of Corrugated Board Manufacturers. Dr. Jmail, welcome on stage. I will present as well Mr. Damien Sorel. Mr. Damien Soler is a representative and legal counsel for the European Investment Bank in Lebanon. He holds a master's degree in international studies from the Geneva Graduate Institute. He will be discussing Dr. Jmail's paper titled Industry and Citizenship. Let me remind you our ground rules for this session. So the duration of our session will be 40 minutes. We will have 15 minutes for Dr. Jmail to present his paper and proposal, and then 6 to 7 minutes interaction with the discussant, and the remaining time will be to discuss, to ask questions, to interact. As Mr. Dingisli stated in his speech, we value and appreciate your questions, your interaction, in order to advocate for updating policies and necessary reforms. Dr. Jmail, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege for me to address such a distinguished audience on the issue of industry, and more so in the context of citizenship, as I really feel that the industry is a booster for both for the economy and also for citizenship, by increasing the national income, the personal income, increasing the national pride, and also consolidating or bringing sovereignty. I think they went too far on me, too fast. Can we go back, please, to the beginning? I will, in the few minutes that I have, do a bird's eye view on our potential, on our what we believe are our lost opportunities, and I'll try to share with you some concrete examples of what could be done. Just to show you the potential of Lebanese industry reaching the whole world, we always advocate that it is not only hummus, and which we are very proud of, but we do have sophisticated items as well. What you see down, for example, is in the silverware. It is sold at Neiman Marcus in the USA, and they have a label made for even one of the biggest French companies, which you know. Furthermore, we are also doing advanced products such as machinery, for sure in the traditional areas like pita bread, but also sophisticated in the electrical equipment. Matelec has provided the switchboards for Euro Disney at Man-la-Vallée, and also in the pharma industry, ours are very strong and even present in France. I'll try to be very fast. I'm sorry that the time is limited. Furthermore, there is a strong industry in electronics, producing boards of every kind, and not the least are our ventilators made in Lebanon. Let me remind you that at the beginning of the crisis, of the COVID crisis, there was a lack of such devices all over the world. 3 companies did not do any business study or studied the potential, but to cater to the needs of the society, 3 companies provided our citizens with sophisticated intensive care units, ventilators. Our industry is very dynamic. It has been growing, and it has been exporting to Europe, gradually to the US, and reaching the whole world, not only, as I've said before, in traditional products, but also in advanced ones as well. And we are reaching the US, Canada, demanding countries. I have talked about the products. Let me talk in a couple of minutes about the industrialists themselves. We have focused on value-added products, on improving our know-how, and putting forward all the potential which make us possibly, which allow us to compete in a market where we cannot compete only on costs. We're not known in Lebanon to have the lowest cost in the world. So we had to put forward sophisticated products, so to speak. And you can see, for example, the one in the middle to the left is a conveyor done for Procter & Gamble. It is provided by a company, Lebanese company, to Procter & Gamble all over that area of the world going to China, okay? And I even provide them with the robots, which they are now making in Lebanon. Having said this, let me just remind everybody that this has come at the expense of lots of sacrifices, not the least being bombarded many times. These are concrete examples of industries which are existing today, and this is what they were facing some time ago. On top of our presence in Lebanon, our industrialists are also quite present all over the world. I'm taking what the ambassador of Côte d'Ivoire of Ivory Coast has said when he was taking over his functions a few years back, that 40% of the economy in Côte d'Ivoire was in the hands of the Lebanese themselves, and the numbers are even higher in some other countries if we consider their involvement in the whole economic activities. And our industrialists are present all over the world. Let me just show you where this is done. This is not an exhaustive compilation. This is done from where we know. In Africa, you can see that our companies are all over Africa, from north to the bottom, and inside the country, doing business on their own, and also collaborating with the biggest international groups such as Colgate, Palmolive, Nestle, and Moto Guzzi, and so on and so forth. I will not go over each one of them because of the lack of time. And this is not, our industry is not only proudly in Africa and in the Gulf, but we are all over the world. Also in advanced industries, in paper industry, we were proud that our industrialists are present in the US. The Indefco Group manages their investment in the world, in the US from Ajaltoun. So we are also in the paper industry in France. Also there are Gemails in the paper industry in Iran. This is just to give you an example, and it's not only in this field. We are present in most of the fields, as you can see. The paper industry, just to give you an example, because this is my background, has roots in Lebanon. We have started by printing at the monastery of Saint Antoine in 1584, and we have introduced to the region several of the paper activities. And as I've said, we are exporting to the globe, and we are also present internationally. So this is a source of pride for us. Having shown all of these possibilities, for us, these are concrete potentials, and done throughout difficult times without any support. So this is why I take it as a real potential. Let us look in parallel what has happened to the economy. If I review, if I take a snapshot, in 2019, we recognize that we had banks' assets at $263.5 billion. This is an astronomical number, and we had at the same time substantial human resources, unique in Lebanon and all over the world in their entrepreneurial spirit and in their capabilities. What has happened in parallel? We forget that our GDP was only at $56 billion. This is a scandal. When you look at the potential we have, how much financial wealth we had, and the strengths of the human capital we enjoyed. I showed you purposely where are the Lebanese all over the world producing and owning and managing companies. So it means we can. So this is what the message I'm trying to tell you. It is a shame that we are only at 56 billion when we have all of these resources. 56 billion is a number. What does it mean per person when you translate it? If you divide it over 5 million residents, it is 10,000 per year. This is a scandal again when you look, if you compare with our neighbors down south or in Cyprus. There are maybe 3 times more, if not more. And we have been suffering from a low growth and a deficit in the trade balance and unemployment. For sure, unemployment is our biggest problem. Before, and even now aggravated by the political situation, but we were very proud, not proud, some were proud that we were exporting our Lebanese. And this is a real problem. Let us look a bit into the dynamic picture as well. If you see that our GDP has been growing very modestly, our public debt growing lavishly from 66.6 to 85 billion in a few years. At the same time, the debt to GDP ratio going up from 139 to 157, and our bank's assets, as I've said. And all of this accompanied by a rising unemployment. So this is where I'm saying, again, these are lost opportunities which we did not put into the service of our economy. This is not just a one-time problem in Lebanon. Unfortunately, we had gone through the same phenomenon back in the 70s. We were all then thinking that Lebanon was enjoying the glorious days, and we forget that we had at that time also M2 to NMP in Lebanon was 1.3. The financial wealth of the whole Middle East, of all the oil countries, was going through Lebanon, and we had this tremendous ratio. In the US, it was only 0.68, and in Japan, 0.97. When I compare this financial wealth, one would imagine that our growth rate would have been very much in line. Unfortunately, at that time, we were growing at less than 6. This is rounded, less than 6 over the few years. At that time, Brazil was at 12, and Korea was at 16. And at that time, I had done a paper at Georgetown University showing that we were growing at a rate less than the less developed countries at that time. We forget this. Now, 5-6% is excellent, but at that time, it was very poor, certainly not in line with our financial possibilities. This is why I'm saying again, we are facing so much lost opportunities. We are not saying that as industrialists, we want everything to turn around industry only. At the opposite, we are saying the Lebanese economy will be strong when all sectors are strong. All sectors are strong together, but knowing also that industry is a driver of other sectors, and it boosts exports, and it is a booster also for the agricultural sector as well. In a nutshell, let me just pinpoint why is industry a microsystem. I'll try to be very brief on this. As to the left, you see that every company, every industrial setup has lots of services needed. So employing managers, employing accountants, employing workers, technicians in-house, but furthermore, they are also making use of auditors, lawyers, external, and PR people, communication, and security, banking, insurance. So we are really driving an economy around every industry. And I give you the example of the wafer, which we had a problem with at that time. Every wafer industry has this circuit, plus it makes use of 4 other industries, 4 other local industries in other products, and also makes use of 8 other industries. So you can imagine the effect that this makes. So we have computed at that time 11 wafer companies are in Lebanon, and they are giving opportunities to 6,600 people. So you can imagine why industry is important. It's not only for a few industrialists. And we firmly believe, contrary to some old paradigms, that the Lebanese industry has opportunities in betting on the flexibility, the resilience. We have become experts in crisis management, the spirit of entrepreneurship, and also the teams of professionals available in Lebanon, and our constant drive for innovation, and above all, our determination to continue at all levels. This is boosted at a time we could have been proud of our investment bankers. Still today, we are very proud about our diaspora. They are a real source of strength for us. And we have the economic diplomacy all over the world, universities and media. And our field is the world, although we can focus on a specific regional places. And we think that the Lebanese industry Lebanon can be an industrial hub for central command for industrial groups managing their companies here or in the world from here, and also doing in Lebanon, producing in Lebanon value-added products and doing all the necessary setups in media campaigns, in product consumption, making also linking with universities. We have very strong universities, and they have very solid research departments. So this is a plus. We are calling for a Lebanon that we'd like to have, a new Lebanon. We are not built on mass tourism, but on selected tourism, not on real estate booms, but on the medical high-end and agricultural AOC. We cannot just build on agricultural staples. I'm not the expert, Mr. Saadi will be talking about it. The role we used to have in bridge east and west, I think this is remote now. So we wish to build on creative industry, on productive Lebanon in all of the aspects. And we finish with the idea of wheeling and dealing at Safa'at. And please let us forget that we are also calling Phoenicians as traders. We forget that before being traders, they are brilliant traders. But before them being traders, they were producers of innovative products at that time, murex, pottery, bronze, and ships. So they are not just traders. They excelled in this. They produced them, exported them, and then they were becoming really the most brilliant traders of the times. So we are suggesting a multi-dimensional and time-phased program by which we want to tackle all the possibilities in the industrial sector. I'm trying to be very brief. I'm sorry, I was the head of the Lebanese industry, and now I've finished my 2 times mandate, so there is a new president, and they are continuing very strongly in what had been done. So we would like to build on also the local markets, boost exports, consolidate sectors, and develop the new industry. Let me just remind you that we had, in import substitution, we were importing $20.7 billion in 2019. And we estimate that from these, 3,000 to 5,000 could have easily been done in Lebanon. And this has taken place with the latest developments. You see that many products are now more and more required and made in Lebanon. And there are also, to do this, we have to consolidate our SMEs. We think that also our small and medium companies are the strengths of the economy. Introduce the appellation d'origine contrôlée to boost the value of our products. Initiate 2 mega industrial projects. I remind everybody of the Renault's experience in Tangier, where it brought with it 40 other manufacturers and created 20,000 jobs. I think this is a very possible industry for the Tripoli zone, the Tripoli economic zone, for the interland. And also in the agricultural cluster sector, we import for $400 million of milk and derivatives throughout the year, and some of them can be easily made in Lebanon. Furthermore, we can reach the diaspora. We have a unique diaspora around the world. If you take country by country, we are not exporting as much as we should to every one of them. I will not dwell into this. Let me just also say that we are seeking to increasing our exports to Europe. We find that we are importing for 8 billion yearly from Europe, but exporting anywhere from 300 million to 400 million. We don't want to invade Europe. We are saying very modestly that Europe imports from the world for $5,000 billion, $5,000 billion. And if we can, from Lebanon, boost our exports from 300 million to 1 billion throughout 3 or 5 years, this can be a revolution for Lebanon, and this can be just samples for Europe. Nobody will notice, we will not hurt anybody, but it will make a real boost for our economy. There are reasons, and they are not what you think. Some they are all depending on the rule of origin, not on the quality standards per se. We find that now what has happened with the Chinese, with COVID, there is a move to the relocation of industry to Europe, and we find Lebanon as a prime candidate also for linking with European companies to produce in Lebanon with them and for them. And also there are, for sure, and we hope, interesting opportunities around oil and gas. And Lebanon can be a central command, as I had said before, building on our universities, on our media companies, and all the strengths that we have around the Lebanese system itself. And we can also look forward for projects in Africa, particularly that the Europeans are looking at Africa with much hope, and the Lebanese are very much have a very strong presence there, and there are much opportunities working for this together. Also, we look forward for opportunities in developing environmental and renewable energies for us, and to make for us, and also to master it for the region. Here also we have to address the energy costs, which have become very problematic. I don't want to go into this, but you have to understand that energy costs for some industrial sectors have become impeding and very it's difficult to continue under such conditions where they represent maybe 45% of the selling price of certain goods. So we also would like, because we are calling also, it's not only roses everywhere, we are calling that we have to prepare a roadmap for carbon neutrality. It's the Europe's challenge, and we have to be in line with this. Of course, Industry 4.0 is a challenge for us. It's an opportunity. It totally fits with the mindset of the Lebanese. This is an opportunity for every sector to be seizing this this is it goes totally in line with the Lebanese youth. They want to be advanced and university graduates, so this is totally in line. And of course, Lebanon is a small country, but it's a powerful platform to the whole world. And time is now. We can do it. The private sector, as you notice, has been going through the whole issues, the whole problems. We are surviving. We are not only surviving, we are trying to strive and to keep our exports despite all what is happening. And I don't need to remind you that every possible means of putting us back is done. Blocking our markets, you name them, you see them. So despite all of this, we are trying to go forward. And this is why we strongly believe that Lebanese industry has a role to do, particularly now, particularly in the recovery. Of course, we are eager to seeing the IMF, and I ask the IMF and I ask all those people related to this program to look with us that it's our dream to have the GDP grow. Of course, we want to have our debt go down. It's an issue of debt to GDP. If we focus only on debt to GDP, we don't want to kill the GDP. We're not happy with a GDP of 20 billion or 30 billion. We should work on a GDP the highest possible, and we can do it. And this is how we can reduce the problem of GDP. And then let me just conclude to say that when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and we are up to it. Hopefully the industrials are up to it. I borrow this from Kennedy Syrian, and thank you all for your kind...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jmail, for your valuable presentation and information. Mr. Damia, we'd like to hear your analysis regarding the presentation and the paper of Dr. Jmail.
Excellencies, dear participants, it's a pleasure to be here today. I would also like to thank Alain Bifani and the Foundation, as well as the Norwegian Embassy for organizing this event today. And also express my gratitude to Dr. Jmail for his very informative and thorough presentation on the state and prospects of the Lebanese industry and more generally the private sector in Lebanon. I'll try not to be long so that we still have time for exchanges at the end of this. First of all, as both the Lebanese and international friends of Lebanon have highlighted in the past months, the unprecedented crisis that Lebanon is currently going through has clearly revealed the weaknesses of the Lebanese model and highlighted the urgent need to focus and concentrate efforts on a more productive economy going forward. At the EIB, we see the private sector's role as key in the future to generate jobs and restore growth in Lebanon. While I agree that the Lebanese diaspora is undoubtedly a strength for this country, it can also represent a burden if remittances are locked up in the financial sector and not directed at productive investments, as was the case in the past decades. This has to change. Lebanon definitely has an impressive number of very successful businesses, many of which have international presence. They are, however, in need of financing to build on their unique strengths. We share Dr. Jmayel's assessments of the strengths of the sector, in particular that of the Lebanese educational sector, as well as a very qualified workforce. One of the most disastrous consequences of the current crisis is that the country is at risk of losing this, and no effort should be spared in saving the Lebanese children's future. Should the education system collapse in Lebanon, this will take generations to rebuild and would have a trickling effect on all sectors of the economy, including the industrial sector. It is clear also that the sector, like many others, is suffering from external factors, such as the state's inability to provide adequate infrastructure, fight corruption, and other illegal practices. This is also something that we call for reforms on. The European Investment Bank, as the world's largest public international bank and key partner of Lebanon since the 70s, is well placed to understand all these challenges, in particular those related to the financing of the private sector and development of the local industry. In the past 5 years, we have invested over 820 million euros to support the private sector across Lebanon, mainly through Lebanese banks for on-lending to local companies and help mitigate the lack of funding being made available to the productive sector, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Jmayel. We also signed a loan agreement with the Lebanese government to partly fund the development of industrial zones in Lebanon, 3 to 7. However, this project is also delayed due to a number of factors. This project would have a big impact on the Lebanese economy, and I would like here to quote UNDP's Climate Proofing Lebanon's Development Plans report that was published last year. Infrastructure interventions have the highest per dollar return, and among such interventions, the baseline Lebanon Industrial Zones project, as planned, has by far the highest overall benefit-cost ratio. Such a project has an economic ratio greater than 1, suggesting that the government can economically recoup more than the initial costs over the project's lifetimes, even if social benefits are not taken into account. We would very much like to see this project materialize. So what does the future look like for the Lebanese industry? Under the current circumstances, it's important to remain realistic, but also be very honest in our assessment. Ideally, Lebanon would develop a national plan for the industrial sector and deliver the means to achieve its goals. This may, however, be difficult under the current political circumstances and other country-specific hurdles. Reliance on the state should therefore be limited at this stage. But this doesn't mean that the industrial and private sector cannot act at their own level. Priorities should be threefold. First of all, we should identify priority sectors in which Lebanon has or is likely to develop a competitive advantage. Secondly, we should seek to secure financing for such companies in such sectors. And finally, there may also be a bit of introspection needed and work on the governance model of traditional Lebanese companies. So first of all, defining priority sectors with a competitive advantage. This is key to developing the Lebanese industry. The Lebanese pharmaceutical sector and agro-business are two that come immediately to mind. As far as the agro-industry is concerned, not only can it be further developed and optimized to better serve the local market and replace imports, but increasing exports also has big potential. Lebanon would firstly need to define which markets it aims to serve. The European market, which has specific standards, or the Middle Eastern ones, which are different, where demand is different. The way the sector is then structured would very much depend on this strategic orientation. Obviously, as a European who very much appreciates Lebanese food, I would strongly encourage you to focus on the European markets. The well-developed pharmaceutical industry is also already very well equipped to serve the local demand and replace costly imports. But there is also more potential here, and Lebanon could challenge exporting countries at its level, of course, but such as India, towards Europe and other countries. Ambitions should be realistic, however, and there should not be more than 3 to 5 sectors at first. Once such priorities are defined, securing financing will be key. And this in itself will be very challenging. As we know, the Lebanon financial sector is not functioning at the moment. And this is where Lebanese companies have very little power to act. However, the diaspora could come into play, as well as the Association of Lebanese Industrialists lobbying power. By securing new trade deals with European clients and other countries, Lebanese companies could be in a position to secure financing for their operations. Bespoke solutions can be explored. The fact that many local companies are familiar in operating in frontier markets is also something that can be leveraged. This could allow to secure outsourcing and subcontracting deals with other companies and European companies that are less familiar with operating in such markets. Joint ventures, however, with foreign companies in Lebanon may prove a bit challenging. As we all know, foreign investments require political stability and a high level of predictability and visibility. More work is needed in Lebanon to achieve this. Finally, some introspection may also be needed to further develop the Lebanese industrial sector. Local companies are largely based on a family model, which is currently down to its 2nd generation. Transmission to the 3rd generation may be challenging, and improvement and modernization of the governance of such businesses may be needed to unleash their further potential. The Lebanese industrial sector certainly faces big challenges ahead, but with innovative and long-term planning, focusing on carefully selected sectors, Lebanese companies definitely have a lot to offer to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sorel. Any question from the public? Yes? If we can give the microphone. Good morning.
I'm very happy that the presentation of my very old friend, Dr. Fadi was not totally triumphalist, and that it did allude to some of the darker sides of what could have been, what is and what could have been with the industry in Lebanon. I have to tell you that whenever we talk about public health with my students, I almost prevent myself from saying, thank God our industry is not more advanced than this. Because the success did not come without a cost. And the cost has been counted in environmental degradation and in increased morbidity. We have known for decades that the manufacturers of Eternit on the coastline of North Lebanon are using asbestos and dropping it all over the place, causing mesotheliomas, and nobody really reacted until it died by itself. We have recently documented a cluster of solid cancers around Barrelies manufacturers, and obviously they have been able to protect themselves from inspection by using the political cahoot around them. The main reservoir of water in Lebanon, Lake Karaoun, is unusable because of toxic contamination. If we want to progress, if industry needs to progress in Lebanon, we need some protection for our health and our environment. We need also to protect our employment, because yes, we can create employment, but if they end up going to foreign workers, then what is it? Where is the social advantage for us? So my question to you, Fadi, is, in the absence of any governance from a failed government, okay, is this industry going to, before it starts measuring its success in dollars and cents and how much it's being able to import, would this industry write down a charter of social responsibility to protect the country that it's working on and using its resources?
Thank you.
Salim, without wanting to show industry as really being saints and these things, let me just tell you that back in, I think it was 2015, we reacted and we took the initiative, and 175 industrialists signed a chart under the association, whereby we are committing to comply with all environmental regulations. Let me tell you that we believe firmly that, and it has been mentioned, that industry is quite belonging to many families. So we say before having our children inherit a factory, we want them to inherit a country. So we don't want to destroy the country. And what I really deplore is that we are using cliches for specific industries and generalizing. I think this is really unfair. And Eternit has closed a long time ago, and I don't want to defend the cement industries, but if you listen to them, they are more than willing to comply. I'm sure you travel a lot and you see cement factories all over the world. The issue is how for them to be compliant and to do all what is necessary so that they are not polluting. So, and this has to come within a strategy. Let me tell you frankly and outspokenly what is the problem. It is that we are dealing with these things in the public, and we are not taking a thorough approach, and we should approach this with all the responsibility it requires. An example, you mentioned the Litani River. And there has been much said about it, and as you know, and it is tested and proven that most of the degradation there is not due to industry. It is due to the spillovers of the people living around it, and particularly, I don't want to hit on that issue, but particularly, and also the Syrian displaced camps, which are not, I'm not saying that that industry is not doing any harm at all, but there is a difference between, and in a public debate, I said once, please don't let these people in the Karawan area die twice. Once because of the problems of the health, but they are not caused by industry, and the others by lack of jobs and lack of despair. So I call for a responsible approach altogether. Again, we have committed that wherever our industrialists are doing harm, any particular harm to the health, we will stop it. Otherwise, we look forward to be compliant within a time frame and with all the assistance needed so that we can proactively solve this issue altogether.
Dr. Jmail, what are some factors that Lebanon can execute in order to attract international companies in building a factory here in Lebanon when labor is not as cheap as Morocco, for example?
Yes, I think before everything else now, we have everything it takes, but one thing that is the most important is confidence. There is no confidence in the country. So let me start by insisting on that. Then I think I went at lengths to show that the Lebanese industry, of course, doesn't have the strengths of unskilled laborers at cheap prices. But we have lots of professionals. And these professionals, these young students, are really, if you compare them, I don't like to use these comparisons, but this is reality. If you compare our professionals, how much do they cost here and what is the cost in Europe, there is a real difference. So in particular areas, in specific sectors, there is much to be done. So I encourage international groups to do joint ventures with the Lebanese companies to seize opportunities. Let me give you examples that have been taking place. Nestle, the world famous Tola, is now made in Lebanon by Landour. I can say it, by Landour. And this is also for other products as well. The brand Bella, it's not only food. So Bella is producing interrupters, I don't know how you call switches, electrical switches. Bella is an international Italian company, maybe 200-something, 50 years old. They are manufacturing, they have started this a few years back in Zahli with the Lebanese counterparts. So there are serious opportunities. I went at lengths to show, I'm sorry because of the little time I had, that we have proven our credibility when I've showed the conveyors to Procter & Gamble. I mentioned, I think, Procter & Gamble. This company, Procter & Gamble, will not gamble and buy conveyors from Lebanon. It is not such a huge investment with respect to what they have. So if they did not know that the Lebanese company would really deliver and is credible, they would not have done this. So we offer the credibility, we offer our drive, we offer our expertise in managing crisis. I think nobody, such as the Lebanese, have proven that we are capable of managing permanent crisis. And we have this network of opening to the world. Let me just tell you that a few years back, the French embassy had organized in Paris a meeting between the Lebanese Chamber of Commerce, the Association of Lebanese Industry, and also the Paris Chamber of Commerce, just to have a link with Africa. Because I mentioned that in Africa, our presence, I didn't go in detail, our presence, the Lebanese presence in Africa is not only from north to south everywhere, but in every country it goes through the country. There is a maillage. The Lebanese have not taken the ports like the other groups. They are proven. So there are strong possibilities of this cluster, of this network of Lebanese around the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jmayel. Thank you, Mr. Sorel, for this interesting topic. And yes, we need to close this topic because we are always running out of time. Lot of information, lot of presentation.
Yes. I wanted to thank. If you allow me just to thank this initiative, the Lebanese Citizens Foundation, its president, and all of you and for being here, and also the Norwegian government and embassy for organizing this. Thank you all.
Thank you. I would like to remind everyone that the papers will be posted on the website of the Lebanese Citizen Foundation, so you can at any time give your feedback, comment, interact. So as we said yesterday, and we repeat today, this is an ongoing discussion that won't be end today. And it's an opportunity for all of us to enrich and enlarge these conversations related to policies reforms. Thank you very much. Okay, and now it's time to move to the second topic. Our second topic for this panel is agriculture by Dr. Riyad Saadeh. Dr. Saadeh is the CEO of Centre de Recherche des Études Agricoles Libanais, Chairman of Engineering Equipment and Contracting, Damascus, Syria, Levant, Agencies and Trade Company, Damascus, Syria, Doctorate in Geographic Economy from Sorbonne, Paris, PhD in Research Work from California, Professor of Rural Economy and Urbanism, President of the Association of Importers and Merchants of Pesticides, from 1978, 1980, 1985, 1988. Also president of the Lebanese Association for Agriculture and Rural Development, 1986-2012. Co-founder and chairman of the board of the Coopérative Libanaise pour le Développement, 92-93. Co-founder and president of the Lebanese Community for Professional Information and co-founder of SALV Liban. Dr. Saadeh is also publisher of counted documents in agriculture, development, and economy. Example, Lebanese agriculture, a sector in crisis. Welcome, Dr. Saadeh. And I would also like to welcome Mrs. Soha Frame. Ms. Frame is the founder of Wata, Lebanese Cider, which is a company that crafts modern cider in her family orchard. She holds a master's degree in development studies, development economics, and international development. She is also a graduate of the American University of Beirut with a bachelor degree in landscape design and eco-management. She will discuss Dr. Saadeh's paper titled Agriculture Sector. And let me again remind you our ground rules for the session. So we have 40 minutes allocated for this topic, 15 minutes to the author, and then 7 minutes for the discussant. And we wish to leave the remaining time to the presence here in order to ask their questions, as well as people attending over Zoom. Dr. Saadeh, the floor is yours.
Good morning. There were 3 reasons for me to participate in this forum. The first, because it's looking forward, and it's high time that Lebanese stop talking and start acting forward. The second reason was because it is engaging in critical discussions related to policy reforms. And I expect this critical discussion to be lively and fruitful during the 30 coming minutes. Last, because it involves young scholars, journalists, and women activists. By the way, we've been talking too much about women for the past decades. Maybe we could also add men activists. You are supposed to have read my paper about future vision for a productive and sustainable Lebanese agriculture and for a rural society actively integrated within the nation. So I hope you are ready for a critical discussion. Consequently, I shall not read my paper. Allow me still to underline 6 messages it is sending. The first message: while we were living in a world of taking risks, which is a situation that could be calculated, we have moved to a world of uncertainty, which is an uncalculated situation. And we lately moved to a world of the unknown, which is certainly not helping us in our attempt to suggest a vision for the future of our country. Nevertheless, our duty is to build such a vision on tangible, natural, historical, and social elements that constitute Lebanon. My second message: Lebanon had a mission which it brilliantly fulfilled during the 3 first quarters of the 20th century. Lebanon has been a unique interface between a Western world needing energy and a Middle East region that had plenty of it. In 1975, we were brutally notified about the end of this mission. In 1990, at the end of the war, we had a unique opportunity to find ourselves a new mission. But instead, our bad governance literally destroyed Lebanon. My second message is that any future vision for Lebanon should be based upon a new, clear mission that we are invited to define. Third message: any future mission of the agricultural sector and the rural community in Lebanon must take into consideration the 4 missions of Lebanese agriculture. At the level of the Lebanese society, what society do we want? Since ever we had independence, I know about no government, maybe the government of President Fouad Shahab, who has ever defined the Lebanese society. Do we want a rural society? What kind of society should it be? This is a must. At the level of the national economy, agriculture has been participating up to 20% of the GDP for many years, until services and industry took over and agriculture fell down to 3% of the GDP in the worst years, a few years ago. But agriculture today in 2021 is back to 5.6% of the GDP, and we expect that a properly managed agriculture with all other para-agriculture activities, that is, the activities that would not exist if we did not have agriculture, should reach about a 25% level of the GDP, which is a normal situation for a balanced country. At the level of the food security, honestly, I am smiling when I hear people speaking about food security in Lebanon. It is a shame. And agriculture should be part of to participate and make sure that we get the best out of it for the security of our people. And finally, at the level of the environment, believe me, a farmer and a fisherman who are given a proper, honorable life are the best defenders of the environment. My fourth message: Lebanon enjoys favorable elements for a flourishing agriculture. The first is water. We have water in this dry Middle East, but we don't know how to manage it. Climate diversity is a very positive point because it allows a multitude of productions, and the importance of the domestic and export markets. The evolution of the gross national agriculture product. I'm sure that the gentlemen from the World Bank or others never seen this, because if they had seen this, they would have wondered where have gone the $1.2 billion of aid and of loans to the Lebanese government, and no impact on the gross national agriculture product. So we can see that between 1958 and 1964, the GNAP increased by 48%. This shows that when there is a government that wants to do something for the people, we can have this kind of growth. Then between 66 and 75, it stagnated, and it decreased between 75 and 1990. What is above the blue line are the prohibited crops, that is hashish and opium. And in 1986, half of the gross national agriculture product was coming from hashish and opium. Meanwhile, if I can have the next one. Yeah. Meanwhile, the GNAP increased by 544% in the European Union, 384% in the USA, 686% in Japan. During the same period, it decreased by 10% in Lebanon. Lebanese agriculture is agonizing. Fifth message, we should stop talking and address immediately the acute crisis to save 2022-23 agriculture campaign. In Lebanon, there is a tradition. We only talk about a crisis once we are in it. And believe me, if we start thinking about next agriculture campaign that is starting in September 2022, we are already too late. But we should have people who should think about it. Sixth and last message, we should simultaneously also stop talking and address immediately the medium and long-run actions that will guarantee a successful, sustainable Lebanese agriculture. Lebanon cannot live without agriculture. We are not Hong Kong, we are not Singapore, we are not Monaco, even if some people during 30 years wanted it. So let's get ready for a critical discussion. The floor is yours. And we can talk, please, your questions can be in any language.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saadeh, for your 6 valuable and thoughtful messages. Ms. Suha Frame, we'll start with your discussion and analysis regarding the proposal of Dr. Saad.
Thank you, Dr. Saadeh, for your paper, and thank you for having me here today in this hopefully impactful discussion. I'm not an expert in agriculture policy. My humble collaboration to this discussion comes from my experience in policy dialogue facilitation and consensus building, but also from my position as entrepreneur in the agri-food business, an advocate and strong advocate for sustainable living. The paper of Dr. Saad, along with the National Agriculture Strategy, that maybe most of you know, are encompassing and comprehensive. But amidst all those recommendations for a better sector and a better Lebanon, there is one condition for success that was clearly stated in Dr. Saad's paper: the need for a political decision. And I would add the need for an inclusive, transparent, and relevant policy process. And we focus on relevant. First, the reach of a consensus. A political dialogue to reach a consensus about the threat of the current status quo on the sector, the irreversible damages to our resources and rural and entrepreneurs' communities, and the lost opportunity of this sector on our national economy. We need to reach a consensus that there might be a point of no return. Second, the need to build a solid agriculture development observatory. And here, Dr. Saad has a lot to say about this. Like any sector, knowledge and data is at the core of sound, strategic, and dynamic policies. The observatory will ensure that solid and up-to-date data is available to experts, stakeholders, and decision makers for a proper management of the agricultural sector. Many initiatives have tried, but with no success until today. Again, a political decision. Putting NAS back on the table, the National Agriculture Strategy, and keeping the momentum, not solely putting it on the table. It should come back as a priority on the table. However, monitoring and stakeholders' dialogue are key to keep momentum and relevance of the strategy. This will allow to identify progress towards the set targets and provide continuous relevant strategic guidance. Fourth, the reactivation of coordination bodies that put together all relevant institutions, donors, and stakeholders. The success of the strategy, or the national strategy or other plan, depends on joining efforts with other relevant institutions, national institutions, local authorities, NGO, UN, and donor agencies, and the private sector. Donors and donors funding should be part of this mechanism in order to ensure that the funds are playing an active role in the implementation of the strategy. According, the design of the project and impact are part of the regional and national strategy and not on ad hoc projects. Stakeholders, including representatives of the rural community, the farming community, and the agri-business entrepreneurs should be core to this committee. And here we open the whole discussion about reforming the cooperatives, but this is a separate discussion to be taken on the side. And lastly, public mobilization. In our public discourse, we merely hear about agriculture policies or reform. So there is a need to build awareness campaigns about the sector with the aim to increase public knowledge and consolidate opinions that would potentially lead to lobbies and pressure decision makers to meet promises and deliver. The need for a parliamentary lobby, hopefully after those elections, that would hold the agriculture sector close to their mission and fight for sound laws, policies, and projects. Yes, we need strong, focused, and determined leader to take this forward. But what if this political consensus and decision is not taken or did not happen? How can our rural community, that is a wealth, socially and economically, continue amid this crisis? How can agribusiness entrepreneurs sustain? And how can we stop the daily degradation of our agriculture wealth? In short, how can this sector resist? In his paper, Dr. Saad mentions addressing the crisis by forming a crisis cell of independent experts to take drastic measures to face this crisis. But we all know, whenever we talk about a crisis cells in Lebanon, we risk falling into the political power share and eventually a bottleneck. However, this cell can address immediate actions that can be done and not necessarily a point of political contention. I will state few examples to join forces with the agri-force community in order to provide the needed support to facilitate the export of agri-products, direct production, and expand export. A lot has been done in the past years, and I speak from experience, I speak from colleagues I've been working on, fellow entrepreneurs. We need support. There has been a lot of work done, excellent Lebanese products, but we need a push. We cannot do it on our own. Consolidate the process of quality assurance critical for export and coordinate with relevant organizations, NGOs, INGOs active in the capacity building of farmers with regard to more efficient and safer agriculture practices. As Mr. Jmayel said earlier, we haven't been the best in terms of competitiveness when it comes to cost, but we are when it comes to quality. How do we make sure we sustain it and make it better? Introduce agriculture AOC to increase the value of Lebanese products. Actively and systematically market agri-produce abroad and form a pool of brand ambassadors for Lebanese products. While we await a national strategy to solve the energy crisis, and ideally the development of sustainable and efficient agri-industrial zones, as mentioned as well previously in the industrial panel, donor-funded projects ought to focus more on infrastructure, including energy projects and post-harvest facilities that would have a regional impact, benefiting the surrounding communities of farmers and agribusinesses, and help alleviate the cost of production rather than on focusing on ad hoc projects. And here there's I know a lot of you will not agree, but subsidization of agriculture products needed for production. And yes, this might be controversial in the current situation, but there's a minimum support needed on this level for the rural community to continue attending to their lands and orchards. Support local food production that would lead to employment, decrease dependency on imported foods, and therefore benefiting the local economy through generating a circular economy. Finally, as we approach the summer season, there's a big need for a national campaign on agritourism. That we are expecting a big number of visitors worldwide, and that would help a lot the rural communities to sustain and strive. Many other measures can be taken for sure, and the list is extensive. But I would join my voice to Dr. Saad by saying we should stop talking and address immediately the acute crisis to save what is left of our natural, social, and economic wealth, so we can then start looking forward. So I will stop talking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dingisley, any feedback or?
Actually, a lot to say after such great interventions. Maybe also some cross-cutting themes that I've heard in the first panel as well. We talked about, again, the first panel, and now about infrastructure and putting the right ecosystem and the right zone, whether for industrial zones or also for the agriculture sector. We also talked about the Made in Lebanon, the AOC, the possibility for Lebanon to increase its potential through this labeling, this branding, and here I think this is also a cross-cutting theme that we would like to see. But at the end, it's also a lot of a matter of access to financing. We talked about this in the industry. It's also the case for the agribusiness sector, and we as EBRD, we really would like to do more. We have the capacity, the appetite to do more. But, and here I join what I said in the beginning in my introductory words, we need to have the right setup in terms of reforms implementation to be able to come up with financing, with support. So what we're doing for now is trying as much as we can to support whether the industry, and we worked a lot with the Ali Association, but also with the agribusiness players in the agriculture sector. We support with technical assistance, with advisory. This is mainly a EU-funded program, so this is mainly grants. We are trying to, in this lean time of not being able to finance, at least to provide this technical assistance, this advisory to prepare for future investments. So we work a lot with farmers, with capacity building. We try to also to do some knowledge sharing with some best practices, international best practices in the industry. And my colleague Damien also mentioned the industrial zones. We are together on this, and we're really willing to invest and put some financing in order to improve the ecosystem. But again, unfortunately, we are doing only really 10 or 20% of what an institution like EBRD can do in Lebanon, because we are like in the ecosystem that will enable us to provide more investment and financing. So again, looking forward for that reforms and time for action.
Thank you. Please, can we have again the graph, the red slide, and we are ready for the question. Mr. Aita. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Riyadh and Lady, for the very well put points and intervention, but I will also use a cross-section with the other things. I think that EIB and EBRD had been in the agricultural sector, and there was a financial crisis in 2019. I would like maybe that you both explain what happened to your loans through the banks or directly to the agriculture and more generally to the sector, and or maybe your investments in these sectors and in the banks.
Thank you, Mr. Aita.
I'll just answer maybe just the direct question on our investments, and maybe also Damien will. We are de facto a counter-cyclical investor. So when you talk about agribusiness, the EBRD invests more or less 10 billion euros per year in our countries of operations, out of which at least between 2 and 3 billion are in the agriculture sector. And of course, among these investments, whether there are a crisis or not, there is some NPLs, which is, again, part of our mandate. We do our best to make sure that our investments are economically and financially viable, but it is part of our job to take that additional risk, because we have, apart from the investment, we have also a mandate in terms of supporting economies in transition. So this is, again, part of our job to take more risk. Specifically on the recent crisis, again, we are a counter. In Lebanon, actually, as far as EBRD is concerned, we have started investing in 2018 in Lebanon. We opened our office here in Beirut in 2017, and so far we have been mainly exposed to the financial sector. So 90% of our portfolio is in the financial sector, and we have one corporate client. We had a lot of other projects, including in the agribusiness sector, in the pipeline, but unfortunately, since October 19, we were not able to materialize this pipeline. So today, we don't have a direct exposure to the agribusiness sector. You know the story, you know? For our exposure to the financial sector is 100% provisioned. So unfortunately, and well, if we touch on this, and maybe it will be also the topic for our fourth panel, but we try together with our colleagues in the international financial institution sphere to be as patient and as constructive as possible. We are aware that our investments, our financing are lost, but it is also part of our role to be in the solution, in the upcoming solution, and not only another problem in this equation.
Thank you, Mr. Dingizli. Dr. Saadi, we have a question here. Cooperatives exist in Lebanon.
Sorry?
Cooperatives, ta'awuniyat. And yet not many farmers join them. So what can be done so as to encourage these farmers to enroll in these cooperatives, and what are the services they offer?
I will answer to that question, but before, I would like to make sure that my message gets through. It seems that it did not. This table, I just addressed myself to you, gentlemen, to you, sir. You have been pouring into this country $1.2 billion in agriculture, aid and loans. We did not see any impact on the gross national agriculture product. Have you ever thought, where did this money go? And when you, sir, And when you, sir, say, rightfully, access to finance is vital, yes, it is. But have we learned anything? That's the point. Today, the Ministry of Agriculture, which pretends that it has no budget, is treating $320 million of your money. Et ça part en fumée. So what is it you want? How have you been through these 30 years helping the reconstruction of Lebanon without noticing that? I bet you, sir, this is the first time you see this graph, because it's not published. Statistics are forbidden in Lebanon because statistics allow accountability. But you, why didn't you try something at that level? You are talking about knowledge. You were talking rightfully about education. Yes, sir. But why don't you go deeper in knowledge? But, you know, honestly, we needed these $1.2 billion. Honestly, for your countries, it would have been a pride to really say, we've done something. Today, c'est un constat d'échec. Total. So please, let's no more repeat all these words we've been listening to during the 30 past years. Let's move to some different approach. Let's start talking a different language. That's all I can say. Now, if I can come back to cooperatives. Same as for many other institutions, we have been under the French mandate. We should thank France for the institutions it has been building and which we received at the independence. The problem is that the laws that were prepared with students of this university, where I have been teaching for 12 years, by the way, are more French than adapted to the Lebanese situation. And the law for the cooperatives in Lebanon is just copy-paste of the French law. Now, one thing is sure, we in Lebanon, we have a sense of cooperation. We call it aouni. مش تعاوني, we call it aouni. And at the end of the Mass on Sunday, the priest will say, aouni ya shabab, Butros بدو يصب سقف بيته. So the priest is saying to the people, let's go and help Butros just pouring his concrete on the top of his house. So there is this kind of spirit. But there is also a reality. This country has been always fighting for survival since ever. And in this case, the cooperative system in Lebanon or elsewhere, anywhere in the world, if there is no missionary that is holding the cooperative himself and pushing it, it never works. And in Lebanon, we have successful cooperatives which have worked, and we have lots of failures. But the problem of governance in this country has made it that every single politician or president of municipality or whatever has wanted his own cooperative, just thinking about whatever grants will be received through this ministry or that other ministry, etc. No, it's a shame. We should look at it in a different way. You see, governance is the basis of any future discussion, and I really insist that we should know what society we want, and then economists are tailors. They tailor a dress at the size of the society you have wished to have. And at that time we have an economy, and believe me, the Lebanese people are skilled enough to be able, even illiterate, believe me, even illiterate Lebanese would be able to build up the country, but we need a certain governance, a certain basic situation that we don't have up till now. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Saadi. Other questions? Yes, Mr.
Sorry, I would just like to answer Mr. Saadi's suggestion on, and indeed this is a very interesting slide, and first time I've seen it. But just very briefly, unfortunately, EIB has not invested directly in the agribusiness, only through our loans to banks, which has gone for some part of it to some companies in the agribusiness. And I think, as Khalil rightly pointed out, EBRD has been present very recently, and so I don't think they have either any significant exposure to the sector. But I can only agree more with you on governance and all that, and this, I think we're all advocating for this change in the country. But what I can say on the EIB more specifically, and the more general problem of the leakage of subsidies and foreign aid to Lebanon, we finance specific projects. And we only disperse against invoices. I mean, I don't want to go into any, specific detail that people are probably not interested in here, but it's a project by project loans. So we are quite satisfied that our money is going to the projects that we finance. And our public sector exposure is in the water sector, the wastewater, transport sectors. And this is also why we are finding it very difficult to actually disperse at this point in time and finalize our projects, because we are very adamant that the money has to go to the project and that the projects have to be delivered. We do not provide budgetary support where, budgetary lines where indeed it's more difficult to track the funds, and that has other challenges. So it is a very big problem that you point out, but I think institutions like ours, which finance projects and specific projects, are slightly different in the way we operate. And while it is possible, obviously, to evade our control systems, it is more difficult. But it is a problem.
Thank you. You see, again, to help Lebanon, there are two problems here. The first problem is that your projects have never been conceived for Lebanon. They were conceived by foreign experts who ignore most of the time, I'm speaking about agriculture, who ignore most of the time the situation of the Lebanese agriculture. And we have had the chance to talk to them, but after the project has been initiated, it was too late. And they always admitted, yes, this is the reason why it's not working. And you're right, you're financing project by project. But our feeling is that your duty at certain time is, well, we have a budget, let's spend it. Our wish is, there is a budget, let's make the best out of it. And we are ready. And you have so many Lebanese experts who would be ready to do so. But they are not involved. Because at the Lebanese government level, from the very start in 1992, there has been a group that has been taking over the whole thing and making sure it's everything but what the country needs.
Dr. Saadi, another question from, how can consumers help the agricultural field in Lebanon? How can consumers help the agricultural field in Lebanon? So well, it's a message for all of us here as consumers.
The consumers are helping quite a lot because after all they are buying the products. And Lebanese consumers are very funny. They are so, there is no such Lebanese consumer. There is such a diversity. I mean, if you move from South Beirut to North Beirut, you get through different countries with different tastes and different wishes, and the prices are also sometimes double or triple when you move from a quarter to another. And this does not help. The information does not exist when it comes to markets in Lebanon, and the problem of marketing has never been addressed properly. The wholesale market in Lebanon is a catastrophe. The kilo is not 1,000 grams. The pound is not 100 piastres. There is 20% unsold automatically. And there is a 10% commission. So at the end of the day, the farmer is really the slave. He has been working for 3, 4, 6 months, 9 months sometimes, and he brings his crop to be sold, and then he's stripped of all of it. Something should be done at that level. Same at the level of exports. Now, same for industry as well as for agriculture. The private initiative has proven to be very healthy in Lebanon. And this is what's keeping on. Lebanese agriculture, the success, there are two matters, very simple. The whole food chain should be controlled. Then you are assured of success. And second, if possible, and whenever possible, foreign partnership. Partnership does not mean having shares in the company. It could be any type of partnership, but partnership means transfer of technology, and we are really not at a stage where we have all the technology, transfer of technology, but also opening markets. This would be a solution, and that is working today. You have so many agriculture operations which are very successful at export because just they control the whole food chain, and the future is not to small farmers. This is why the definition of a rural society, you don't need to be in agriculture to be in the rural society. There are so many small industries, agriculture industries and others. There are so ecotourism, etc. We should define this society before going into small solutions. In Arabic we call it ترقيع. وصلنا 30 سنة عم نرقع.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saadit. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Ms. Frame, Mr. Dingizli. So we will have a 20 minutes coffee break and meet back for our third and fourth topics for this third panel, re-engineering the economy. So it's 11:45. We'll meet at 12:05. Thank you very much for listening.